my watch shows 3 o'clock, so if that's the case, we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'd like to call this meeting of the Public Safety Appropriations Subcommittee to order. And I've only got a few remarks here, but I'd like first to go, we've got an agenda, and I don't know who made it up, but here's how we're going to go. First will be the Department of Community Supervision, then the Department of Corrections, Department of Public Safety, Georgia Public Safety Training Center, Post, the Firemen, Office of Highway Safety, Judicial Council, and Prosecuting Attorney's Council. There's your lucky day, Al.
All right, yes, sir. We got it now. Let's call for a quorum.
And I'd like to ask Reverend Williams if he would to offer us a blessing.
Lord, forgive him for his real thoughts.
Since I have the mic, y'all relax. It's my Baptist day. All right, let us pray. Everlasting and eternal thou art God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this gathering. Bless the members of this committee. Bless those that are here. And keep our minds stayed on you and keep our hearts and heads clear. For it is in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. As we move forward here, I would like to, we're supposed to wear masks unless you're speaking, but I don't think you can understand me if I do wear one. Most of the agencies under the executive department, if you look on your tracking sheet, everybody got a tracking sheet? There's a little S, and you can see by the numbers that indicates that it's a universal expenditure. Every agency. So I would like for you, if you could, just to go down through your organization, but you can skip all those that have the S because very obviously that's going to stay in the budget if it's a pay raise or something that they have to do for retirement or something. So I'd like to go ahead and start by calling the Department of Community Supervision. Director Nail.
Thank you, Chairman, and members of the board, and I will be as brief as you will let me, and thank you for moving things along quick with, aside from the cost of living adjustment, we have two items, major maintenance and repair. Just as a reminder, we have 10 state properties that we own consisting of about 34 buildings. We're asking for $940,000 in major maintenance and repair for our Augusta office, which we also run a day reporting center out of, as well as our Dalton office, which we run a day reporting center out. The heavy lift in Augusta is for 51 package terminal air conditioners. This used to be a diversion center, so it doesn't have centralized heating air. It's more individual. And then Dalton replaced HVAC, interior, exterior improvements, and roof repairs. Second item we have is a capital request for the Savannah Day Reporting Center facility purchase. Currently we are...
Which section is that under?
I'm sorry, sir.
I know the first one's 1826, but
This is going to be line 50.2.3.23. In the bond section.
oh, it's a bond package?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay. We don't typically handle bonds here. It usually goes through a different process, so.
Okay.
Hey, I'm good with that, sir.
Oh, yeah. That's it?
That's it, sir.
My gracious. Anybody got any questions?
That's good enough.
I will if you'll indulge me, sir.
Sure.
I never want to miss an opportunity for the men and women of DCS. Just as you all have operated in unprecedented times, they have as well. They've adjusted and stayed focused on the mission. I just never want to miss an opportunity to thank them. They're doing a wonderful job, and we appreciate your continued support.
Well, I appreciate what they do, and I really think it's been an innovative procedure when you put them in the car and double them up and use their office as a car, so they're out and about all the time. And I think they get to contact more people as a result.
They do, and community supervision should be done in the community.
Yeah, and I know how it is to be in a car all day every day. So
Yes,
it's taxing, and it can hurt your back and other physical maladies.
Yes, sir.
But I appreciate what you do, and
Thank you,
thank
sir.
you.
You all have a great day.
Department of Corrections.
How you doing, Mr. Chairman?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Doing fantastic today.
I wouldn't go that far. Not yet.
Oh, all right. Our specific agency recommendations is going to start on page 32 through 34. Starting with tracking number 19.7.1.
And we're not on Zoom. I think everybody saw the message. I hope everybody that's supposed to be on the agenda today is here, but apparently we don't have Zoom here, and we just tried to hook up, and it's not working. So apparently their information that they provided to us is accurate. So, okay. What was that again?
It's tracking number 19.7.1.
Okay.
And that's 3.2 million to provide an increase in per diem rates for the private prison, and that's going to bring them up to the $5,000 raise for parity for their correctional staff. Tracking number 19.8.7, that's 6.7 million to provide technology projects which promote offender health, safety, and security. Tracking number 19.8.1.
How about 19.8.7? Is that part of what we did in amended? Where?
No,
Okay, this
No.
isn't the radios or the?
no.
Okay,
This is for officer tablets. What we're trying to do for retention effort, everything that we do is paper, like paper logs and things like that.
right.
So we're trying to get the officer tablet for automation so they can do everything they need to do at the touch of their fingertips. And that what most of the young kids want right now. Okay, tracking number 19.8.8, and that's 45 million to provide funding for capital maintenance and repairs statewide. That's chillers, boilers, and roofs and things of that nature.
That's part of the speakers program, isn't it? The public safety initiative.
Yeah, I think that's for that 47.
Yeah, that's what's normally funded by bonds.
Right.
By bonds, yes.
Right.
Tracking number 19.8.9, 7.2 million to provide personnel operating funds for the regional transportation hubs, and those for creating regional hubs for the local sheriff to drop off their offenders there, and we'll take them on to Jackson.
My understanding is, when we discussed that in amended budget, that was a little bit different than yours, that that was how it was originally gonna be, but my understanding now is that the expectation is that that you're gonna deliver them. You're gonna pick them up and deliver them yourself.
I think that the compromise that was done.
But y'all work it out. I just,
Yeah,
I want you to know that,
from my understanding, this is the compromise.
right, okay, okay.
And also, so the total ask for agency-specific recommendations is $62,896,276. And then also it's going to be tracking number 50.2.3.4 in the Georgia Building Authority budget. Another $167,650,000 for the facility transformation plan to go ahead with the buying of a facility and the construction of another facility. That'll be that total $600 million that the governor promised.
Okay, but that's in a different
Yes. I
budget
will make
hearing.
sure we got that out.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
But that's all I have, sir. And any question that you may have for me at this time?
I don't have any, Representative Holcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few questions. One is, my wife's family's from Tattnall County, and I've heard rumors, I don't know if it's beyond rumors, that the new location is going to be in Tattnall County.
Yes,
Is
we
that
have-
accurate?
Yes, that's correct. We have 14,000 acres there, and we're going to construct that in that vicinity right there on the reservation.
And that, excuse me, and that's even gonna hold more inmates, more beds than what we currently have in Tattnall County.
Yeah, it has to have the latest technology and automation that we need as far as retention and for both offender and staff safety.
And my understanding is you're gonna maintain keep the old state prison and,
I want to repurpose it for filming purposes. Also, has a historical value because I tell people Georgia State Prison fed a lot of families down there, and I think there's a purposeful use for that as far as tours and filming and things like that. We can take advantage of that great structure down there.
well, you know, I live right outside of Savannah, and Channel 11 News had on there a couple of weeks ago when I was home that they were gonna close down the state prison, and even though I'm 70 miles from Reedsville, my phone just lit up, because I know a lot of people over there.
I try to do my due diligence and notify as many the representative down there and let them know what the purpose was, and kind of dispel a lot of rumors that were out there. And the rumors were running kind of rampant out there.
They were.
You know, change is hard for a lot of individuals, and that facility's been open since 1931.
I think many were soothed once they found out that the new facility was gonna stay there. They just saw the jobs and, you know, family after family have lived there, worked there all their lives. And, it's, you know, they always said in Tatnall County, you either worked at the prison or you went there. And, there weren't many other options.
Yeah. And one of the things, I was kind of mindful of that and respectful of that, because again, it has a deep history down there for a lot of individuals in that vicinity down there.
I got a deep history there. I've been in and out of that place many, many times back before y'all had the riot squads. And
I've heard your stories.
yeah,
That's some good ones.
My other question, or questions, if I may, would be, one of the things that we've heard repeatedly is on the turnover of the workforce, and if you can address that for us
Yeah,
a little
right
bit.
now, of all my security positions, we're at 48.7% of turnover.
Annually?
Yeah, right now, yes, annually. And what my goal is, prior to the pandemic, we were right at 26% vacancy rate at that time, and my goal is to get to that. One of the luxuries, one of the things that really has been helping us out is during the last 2 years, we've had anywhere between 7 and 10,000 vacant beds in the facility. Right now, we have 7,670 vacant beds. So that's almost 5 facilities that are equivalent of 5 facilities. So we're able to control the populations at different facilities to kind of bring the population down to the staffing level of those facilities. That's how we've been managing during the crisis and during the process.
Okay. And the staffing level gets to another issue, which is a little bit harder, but it's the issue of violence within the prisons, which has been raised in terms of the number of deaths. And so can you talk a little bit about what's happening and what the plan is to make sure that there is safety for individuals that don't have their liberty anymore?
Yep. One of the things I always try to start off by painting the picture first. 74% of my population is violent. The average length of sentence right now is 30 years. We have almost 14,000 active gang members. We have another over 10,000 that are mental health. So criminal justice reform did an awesome job of steering a lot of the low-level offenders away from the prison system. But we have on the back end, we have a more hardened offender in our population. 3 years ago, I talked to Governor Kemp when he appointed me. He said, "What's the biggest problem?" I said, "The biggest problem is our aging infrastructure. Our infrastructure is not suited to house the individuals that we have. One of the issues is that they can readily make shanks out of the facility's aging infrastructure. What the package that he's giving us now, he's giving us what we need to harden up our facilities, build state-of-the-art facilities to house these more violent, dangerous offenders that we have. Also, one of the things that we've done is we've partnered with a company called Optimal for offender management as far as offender classification. So we can better house individuals that are coming in with those more violent offenses, more gang affiliation, so we can kind of better situate those individuals. But again, if you look at my numbers across the board, my numbers as far as assaults on inmates are down. But when you're dealing with a violent offender population, when they do something, do it in a very big way. If I have an issue with you, I'm not just going to punch you in the eye, I'm going to stab you. Okay? So that's what we're dealing with. But also we have to try to make sure that our goal is to make sure we got to feed them, we got to house them, make sure we have educational programs and programs for them. And so every opportunity that they have to do something like that, they're going to try to do that. And so we're just dealing with a more violent population. And until we can get some more facilities that are able to better house these guys, so we can better confine them, we're going to still have those issues. But my team, as Commissioner Nail said before, I'll put the team that I have against anybody in this country. They do an admirable job over the population that we're dealing with day in and day out.
Okay. And I hear you in terms of the facilities, and that makes sense, but at the same token, most will ultimately be released, right? They're not life sentences. So can you just quickly kind of walk us through how are you measuring the ability to prevent them coming back? Because the department is a department of corrections, and so what is the corrective measures? You mentioned some, but are you really tracking that in terms of recidivism, how it's working, those type of things? Because ultimately, I think we'd all like to see the numbers go down, right?
And one of the things that you can't really predict what an individual's gonna do once he gets out.
Right.
You know what societal pressure is out there. One of the things that we make sure is that we have the tools for those individuals. And try to take any of those barriers down. One of the things is making sure that we offer vocational programs for those individuals who don't have vocational training. Make sure we offer GED for those individuals who don't have a GED. And then also we make sure that they have proper ID once they leave. And so we make sure we have the tools that if they're gonna go out and be successful, they have those things. But again, it's ultimately left up to that individual whether or not he wanna make that change. Our goal is to make sure we have those tools out there for him to make that change, and we have those tools in place for those individuals to make those changes.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
I'm sorry I cut in on you. I thought you were finished.
Good questions. Yours are always welcome.
Representative Williams?
Old age.
He can count. There's two of us in here today.
Moving around the table.
Couple of things. And thank you for the presentation, and thank you for what you and your whole department does. And I heard a lot of sentiment. Certainly, prison has meant a lot to Tatana County and the surrounding area. A lot of people drive outside of Tatana County to go to work there. But always remember, it's not held in that loving spot by a lot of people, especially those that were on the other side of the wall. So, you know, that's exactly a museum piece for them. They get as far away from it as they can. But I think it's important that there be some preservation from a historical standpoint. And it is certainly important to the economy of that area that we have a thriving. I'm glad to see a lot of upgrades because you're trying to put new wine in an old bottle. Old sack, it just doesn't work. But, you know, continue at it. Thank you all for the job you do.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. First of all, Commissioner, thank you for working with the State Properties Committee on Red Hill Cemetery. That's has gotten a lot of interest from the committee members. Second of all, this morning we heard from the well of the house in regard to the shackling of pregnant women. This I want you to dispel once and for all, because you and I have talked about this many years, and would you tell this committee what actually happens there?
And I want to say this loudly too. We do not shackle pregnant females. Okay, we do not. When an individual comes into a female offender comes into the Georgia Department of Corrections, we give every female a pregnancy test. A lot of times, a lot of females who come in the system don't even know they're pregnant. Once we find out that those individuals are pregnant, we move them to our Helm facility, and we don't shackle it. In order for us, if only the reason that we have to restrain an individual, if they are a life safety issue between her and her baby, that's the only way. And they do not have the authority at the lowest level to do restraints. They have to go through a progressive steps to finally get approval to restrain that individual if it's going to be a life safety issue between her and her child. And also, I think they said on the floor today that they've unforeseen miscarriages. We've only had about one miscarriage in the last 3 years in the Georgia Department of Corrections. And I want to know where they're getting that information from.
Well, thank you for doing that, because you and I have had many conversations, and you're very good about showing me the stats and things that we've had over the years. Mr. Chairman, may I ask one more?
Certainly.
With the governor's push in regard to mental health and the need for mental health throughout the state of Georgia, can you talk to us just a moment about the suicides in the prisons?
Yep, and that's a great question. Right now, I have 10,519 mental health offenders. That's 23% of my population. Right now, we're sitting at, for the fiscal year, 22 suicides. That's not counting over 295 preventable suicides that we prevent an individual from committing suicide. that is a situation that, again, our population, I am the de facto mental health hospital for the state. One of the things that I've done since I've been commissioner is every individual, I don't care if they're clerk, food service worker, all of them have mental health training. But we know when you have a severely ill population like that, it doesn't take 3 minutes for an individual to commit suicide. And if you're making your 13-minute rounds, 30-minute rounds, 15-minute rounds, there's gonna be that possibility of a person who really wants to commit suicide, they're gonna do that. And, but listen, one death is too many, and we fought each and every day to prevent those individuals from committing suicide. But we've had, I have just appointed a new mental health director, Dr. I, very progressive thinker as far as it relates to mental health. We are trying some out-of-the-box things as far as with peer mentors as far as helping out with mental health. But everything out there possible in our power to do that, we're doing that. But again, we have almost 11,000 diagnosed mental health offenders in our population. That's 23%. And that is a large number for any prison system. And again, if you put a blanket over my system in the last 2 years, because we are a microcosm of the free world. And during this pandemic, the number of suicides in the free world are through the roof also. And we're no different from the free world as far as the number of spike in our suicides. But I'm not going to justify that by saying that. But it is, we are a microcosm of the free world.
And I would say that, you know, having dealt with veterans a lot in PTSD, we have about 22 veterans a day that commit suicide throughout our country, which is just a horrific figure. But I'd like to thank you for coming. I know every time you come, you get more questions about what goes on inside the prisons than you do about fiscal issues. And I'm a supporter. I've been in and out of those prisons many times throughout my career, and I'd like to open it up. We do juvenile justice too, and there were some questions there, and the Commissioner of Juvenile Justice opened the door for us to come visit those who are interested in going in and just seeing the environment that actually occurs. You know, there's more rumor and innuendo in the prison system, I think, and I get an email every day about something that supposedly is going on there. But if anybody wants to go and you're agreeable, we'd like to come one day and.
And we do that all the time. Rob Thrower, to get with our legislative liaison, we set up tours, we do it all the time.
Right.
And, you know, and again, we are open book. And I lay out the facts. And if it's up to those individuals who want to hear the facts or not, but I'm gonna give you the facts.
And I appreciate it. And I introduced your predecessor one time, I don't know whether you were there or not, as the proprietor of the largest gated community in the state, and about 50,000 worth. But I appreciate what you do. I know it's hard to keep people. The salaries have been down. I hope we've helped that in the last 5 or 6 years, and I think this 5,000 will be a pretty good boost for you. But I know that when the economy is running like it is today, it's much more harder to keep people. And some of the things that have happened in the state government aren't as there's not many benefits as there once was, and people are always looking, and you got a tough job, and I appreciate it, and I think you've done a good job. I just, you know, and I usually say what I think. So.
And because of the men and women that you have working on the front line, they do an awesome job each and every day.
Well, I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Department of Public Safety.
Good afternoon,
Colonel.
Mr. Chairman. We appreciate the opportunity to be with y'all this afternoon to talk about our fiscal year 23 budget. Our budget can be found on page 21 of the House tracking sheet. For the agency-wide recommendations, we support the governor's budget recommendation to fund a proposed cost of living adjustment increase of $5,000 for all of our full-time benefit-eligible employees for a total amount of $9.4 million. We support the governor's recommendation of $1.4 million to allow eligible employees the ability to withdraw up to 40 hours of earned annual leave. We believe this is a positive step in helping our employees and providing them a resource. We support the governor's budget recommendation of $4.9 million to fund the reflected change in the employer retirement contributions for ERS and TRS. DPS supports the governor's budget recommendation of $582,000 to adjust the agency premiums for DOAS insurance and $47,000 for an adjustment to the TeamWorks billing. Mr. Chairman, on line
I think all those are
agency-wide,
agency-wide. The only
Yes.
thing I see on yours that,
the
that
39,
isn't is the,
0.4.
trooper school.
yes, 39.4.6 in field offices and services, 3.1 million to fund a 75-person trooper school. And that's the only one that we got that's
Is,
outside of
How
agency-wide.
many you got in school now?
We currently have 2 schools in right now. We've got 41 in the 111th school, and we have 29 in the 112th school. So both of those classes will be graduating in April, and both of them are past the critical academics. So hopefully in April we'll be graduating a total of 70 troopers.
Isn't one of them post-certified school?
Yes, sir.
How many are left in that?
29 in that one, yes, sir.
How many did you start with?
We started that class with 42.
42. What about the other one that's got 41? How many did you start with?
We started 72 on that one.
Kinda rough on me.
Well, I don't know if we're rough on them or if we're trying to get the best candidate out. We certainly don't want we certainly don't want to we certainly don't want to lower our standards by any stretch of the means.
And I probably don't need to expound on any of that. Haven't been involved with it for many years. I know that it's usually about a 50% rate. Those who make it into school probably. It's amazing to me. I mean, I snuck down there one Sunday afternoon when it came in and just walked in to see what transpired, because everybody that goes through the process says goes through the oral board says, I will never leave. If you give me this chance, I'll be there forever. And I'd go down to open the school at 10 o'clock Monday morning after they came in at noon Sunday, and there'd be 6 or 8 sitting outside with their suitcases, and nothing that I saw out of the ordinary happened. I mean, they may have been a little bit. I know I was in the Army. They probably didn't treat them. I was in the Marines. If you, Al couldn't get in the Marines, so he just joined the Army.
Wanted to go with the intellect one.
But if that's all you got, everything else,
Yes, sir. That's the only one.
everything else
outside
in the
of our-
bonds
Yes,
or
sir.
in the supplemental.
Right. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Our bonds got moved to the amended fiscal year 22.
Some of them. I mean, the supplemental.
Yes, sir.
What was it, 4 or 5 million, and the other, 55 million was still in bonds.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any questions?
Sure. I know you're excited.
I don't even know why I asked that
I
question.
know you're excited. Colonel, I just wanted to say this before you leave. Before I finally leave these hallowed halls, I'd certainly like to see a colonel or someone come in here and say, I disagree with the with the governor's assessment from day one. Then I can leave in peace.
Well, that won't be me, sir. Because I am a supporter. Very much so, and I certainly appreciate all the support that he has given our agency.
Well, I think everybody that comes through this public safety committee has a great job and do a great job, and I think the public appreciates it more than they realize. They hear from people on both ends of the bell-shaped curve. They always get the most notoriety, and I think the average working person, middle-class person, appreciates the fact that we have good public safety in this state from all the different agencies, and we can feel fairly safe and secure in our beds at night. But we appreciate what you do.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Georgia Public Safety Training Center. I trained both of them too.
Yes, sir, you did. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Thank you for taking the time to see us today. I will not go over the statewide changes if everybody's in agreement with what those are, and I will move straight to 39.9.6 in your track sheet. And that is to provide funds for 10 instructors in the field of use of force and de-escalation. And then it's broke down below that, 6 general instructors, 3 supervisors, and 1 manager that will oversee that program throughout the state. The next is 39.9.7. That is to remove funds. Last year you were generous enough to give us a one-time fund for a use of force structure, so it will be removed from that. And then the last item is 39.9.8, which is bonds, but it's also been moved to the amended
Cash.
22.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you about 39.9.6 and 7. Is that the new use of force program that I think I went up with some people from Post and your training director to Maryland?
No, sir, that is not
It's
that
not-
program. No, sir. This is a program that we created in-house about 5 or 6 years ago. And we've got such a positive feedback throughout the state, we're wanting to actually put it on the road and take it through to local communities throughout the state. That's what these instructors will be doing.
And I know there are a lot of repairs going on at the Public Safety Training Center. It's hard for me to imagine. I remember when it opened, but there've been a lot of years, and a structure like that, particularly with a flat roof, probably is in great need of some repairs.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. Any questions?
I'm fine, thank you, Chairman.
You're okay. I don't know if you're fine. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Post Council.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to come by and speak with you today. Our budget request can be found on page 22, beginning in section 39.8. To be brief, I will also forego any of the governor mandated changes, and we'll focus on line 39.8.5, which provides funds for the addition of 1 auditor, 1 investigator, 1 curriculum specialist, and 2 hearing officers, for an additional cost of $500,859. That would be the only addition to our budget for this year, sir.
What about that use of force program that I was just talking about?
We, actually, the Georgia State Patrol has received funding to run a pilot program on that, and that'll be starting in the next month or so.
Okay.
So we're still trudging along, sir.
How many districts does Post have now? Do you have an investigator for each district, or?
Yes, sir. Right now, we have 8 investigators. We have 2 openings that we're in the process of filling, and this additional position will bring us up to 11.
Okay. And two additional hearing officers?
Yes, sir. As you know, that process is very long. It's actually too long. This will allow us to speed that process up greatly.
Okay. Okay, any questions? Representative Holcomb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you say too long, do you have a backlog now, or what is the usual time
Yes,
frame
sir.
that it takes?
The average time frame to run things all the way through to a post-hearing and then through an appeals process all the way to OSA could take it well in excess of 2 years.
Okay. What do you think it should be?
About 90 days, ideally.
How do we fix that?
By adding the additional hearing officers, we'll be able to move that process much faster. We've also created a process by which we have greatly reduced the time lag that allows someone to file for an appeal. What we've done typically in the past is waited till we went all the way through the council process, and then they had an unlimited amount of time to file for an appeal. What we found out was that we had officers who were actually under appeal that were stringing this along up until when they could retire. And I don't think any of us want that to happen.
Okay. How many hearing officers do you have now?
1.
Okay. So So with two more, you'll greatly increase the
Turnaround time,
resources.
yes, sir.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
And part of the problem is, as I see it, from having served there for 12 years, is, the process for the hearings, and most of them, the Attorney General's office handles those, and
It is
there's
lengthy.
such a large number of them who make appeals that it just overwhelms them. And then they try and make deals with the AG, which happens a lot of times because they just can't afford to go all the way through with it.
The toughest problem actually for us is those cases that go to OSA, as you know, we have to pay for that.
Right.
Even though we prevail almost in every single account, those hearings cost me anywhere between $2,000 to $15,000 a piece, and that can be very expensive on a small agency like Post and on our budget. But as my father would say, that's the cost of doing business, and I'm not going to back up on that.
Yeah. Well, I'm supportive, having been there and seen what happens and how long it takes. I think it needs to be expedited.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
What is your caseload right now?
We're running about 1,500 cases a year through that, and those range from the very mundane to the quite serious.
Okay. How many would you categorize as being quite serious?
250 probably.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I think I sign on average about 180 felony suspension orders a year. So those are officers who are charged with felonies.
Wow, that's a lot.
How many officers are there?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. Beginning in March of this year, we had almost 59,000 public safety officers in the state of Georgia. That includes law enforcement officers, jailers, correctional officers, pardons and parole, the whole gambit. Beginning in March of last year when COVID hit, during that time we have lost to retirement or resignation by now somewhere around 12,000. And we have been able to replace about 7,500 of those individuals. So we're running a deficit in terms of officers, especially when you look at the Department of Juvenile Justice and Department of Corrections are having the biggest problem out there right now.
Chair, the reason I said it has the relevancy when you look at all.
The overall number, if you just use the number, it's rather huge. But when you look at 59,000 officers, overall, you got a pretty good group of people.
Statistically, they say that 2% of any population will cause problems, whether that's the priesthood, law enforcement, doctors, whatever you say. I mean, if you apply that formula, we're actually well below the 2% rule.
Yeah, and if I can ask just
Sure.
one more, it's in terms of the misconduct, is it more often than not work related, or is it more often not work related? In other words,
There's
some type of
probably more
dispute.
off-duty issues that deal with domestic violence,
That's what I was
alcohol
thinking.
abuse, things of that nature. But there is a significant amount of work-related stuff that primarily deals with, as the chairman could attest to, theft of time, that kind of stuff. What you don't see is a lot of officer misconduct, such as planting evidence or, excessive use of force. Those kinds of things are not nearly as common as people might believe that they are. But as far as people stealing, people lying on affidavits or lying when they get into an internal affairs investigation, that's a problem. Deception is the number one thing that costs you your certification in law enforcement, because you can't testify
Right.
once you've been branded Brady cop.
Very true. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions? We appreciate it.
Chairman,
Thank you.
thank you, sir.
Firefighters. Hey, how are you?
Committee, I'm fine. I'm here on behalf of Firefighter Standards and Training, and I apologize that we don't have they didn't give me a tracking sheet. So they told me yesterday, said, you need to show up, and I said, yes, sir.
We've got some extras here, haven't we?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I could find what we need to find in that quick a time. Thank you, sir.
He can give you a page number. My pages are different. I was sprouting them off
see.
the other day, and I found out that mine were different. Everybody was looking at the wrong page, so.
39.7.
9.7.
And the only thing we're interested in primarily is 3975, which is the fireworks excise tax collections.
Well, those apparently went very well from what I understand. I was here to let y'all know we were asking for a budget increase for 2023 of $80,000 for an IT person and an additional $70,000 for our online testing program. There's some additional database work that was going to have to be done too. IT person, we haven't had our own for quite a while, and we've contracted that out, but we're going with a system called Cadus that the State Patrol uses, and we're very hopeful that that'll allow us to incorporate a lot of what we do into that system.
How large is your agency?
We've got 10 people, and right now we're down to 7. Interim director is Tony Pritchett over at the State Fire Marshal's office. He's their lead investigator.
Any particular reason you think you got the vacancies, just normal transition, or?
Well, we had one guy that had started with us and had some family things that he felt like he needed to take care of, and so we're down that slot, and our executive director, they're still searching. So from what I understand, they hadn't quite found who they want, although there is an executive session coming up at our next council meeting.
Okay, I think we may have somebody here who's got a question. Al?
Tell me something, sir. You've got 10 total people.
Yes, sir.
Trained how many firemen in Georgia?
Well, right now, we're not exactly sure how many. We have about 30,000 names in our database. That's what we're hoping Cadus will help us kind of clean up too, is we'll be able to identify and track people. But right now, we test about 13 to 15,000 firefighters a year, or that many tests a year, and for paid and volunteer people. And part of what's driven this is over the years we'd heard from the legislature we need to start doing online testing, and we did for a little while, and we had a system collapse and lost that capability. And in fact, our entire database collapsed about 5 or 6 years ago.
But we put the funds in last
Yes, sir.
and appropriated to fix that.
Y'all did, and we are very grateful for that, because our previous director, executive director, really wanted to make it where we offer about 90% of our tests online as opposed to pencil and paper. Right now, we're 100% pencil and paper, and this system with the Cadus will help us solve that problem. In fact, I hope we'll be 100% online myself.
You got some folk probably want to be firemen that never seen a pencil in the paper.
Well, there's a few of them out there. Yes, that's right. You know, we still have some that you know, they've struggled over life, but it's, you know, we're certainly welcome in the fire service. We got to be there for everybody.
They're probably from Liberty County.
Liberty County's kind of got it going on, so I was just down there about 3 months ago.
Well, I got to say, you know, when I was the Homeland Security Director, I dealt with the fire community, you know, every day,
Yes.
particularly with equipment that we were getting Homeland Security funds for. And what astonished me at the onset, and I come from a fairly medium-sized county, I think it's about 70,000 people, but about 70% at that time of the firefighters in this state are volunteers. Yeah. And, you know, there's a lot of difference when you come to training with what a volunteer can do as opposed to what a professional firefighter can do. I mean, they have jobs and responsibilities, and they just can't take off anytime they want, go to the Public Safety Training Center for 2 weeks and go through a course. And But ours, we've melded all of them in together now in our county, and
Yes, sir.
of course I represent Chatham County too, and they have pretty much all professionals because of Savannah, the size of it, and I just know it has to be an awesome job to get everybody together, and it's enough when everybody works for you to get them together when it's scattered all over the state. But when they work at different facilities and work different shifts, and I see it at home when they were volunteers. The alarm goes off and people start running out of businesses and get out of trucks and run to the fire station and get in there. And I've always marveled at how much they knew and how well trained they were. And I guess they do most of that on their own too. And the online capability certainly helps people.
Yes, sir.
You
I
don't
think
have to
so.
travel to, it's 200 miles from my home to Public Safety Training Center, and just everybody can't do that. So
No, sir. Yes, but we appreciate everything that y'all done. And the Fire Academy, of course, they're doing a really good job of getting out there and offering training in the field too. But a lot of them do it at home. So
yeah. Any questions? Okay, we thank you.
thank y'all for your time.
Office of Highway Safety,
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
another one of my proteges.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna
Did
ask.
you get my files?
I did not.
No. I only made
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna ask if it's okay to bring my finance director, Ms.
Sure.
Robin
Sure.
Bazemore, and Mr. Josh Turner, the Director of Driver's Ed. Today, thank you all, committee members, for allowing me to present today. We actually bring just 3 short concerns, and we'll be brief about it. If we follow the track sheet, 3910-1, it's a cost of living adjustment, and we're so gracious of the governor to offer up that suggestion in 3910-2, the annual leave, 40 hours payout, and the third item, 3910-3, which is the employee retirement system. At this point, I'm going to defer to Ms. Robin to explain those 3 items, sir.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. I wanted to just bring to you, and I did send Brian a copy. I apologize, I may have sent it too late, but on the cost of living adjustment, thank you so much. That's very generous.
You can take the governor, I think.
Well, yes, but I just wanted to ask for consideration. We did calculations, and I've been working with other CFOs around the state to help kind of gather this information. And we are going to be short on this for our budget. And I do ask for an additional funding of $154,566 for that to accommodate. And also for the annual leave payout, we do not know, of course, if the COLA is going to be approved for 23, but under the assumption if it is, then the amount would be, of course, $43,952.38, and we would be short $33,744.38.
What are we talking about with the COLA?
I'm sorry, it's line item 2, the annual leave payout.
Oh, okay, okay,
I'm sorry.
okay.
And we do have 23 of the 25 eligible today. And
23 of your 25
of
employees
25,
are eligible?
yes, sir, to actually take advantage of that payout. And we've got some, discussions that we hopefully will have some more information on. But our understanding that the employees would need 160 annual hours for that. We're still trying to understand the rules for that, but someone told me
For
today
the
that.
payout, typically it's 45 days annual leave you can get paid for.
Okay,
And every 20 days counts as a month's pay.
okay.
So it's two and a quarter months' pay.
Okay. So, but we will be short on that if the COLA does go through by $33,774.38. And also on the line item 3910.3, the ERS payout, we are looking at just 3 employees alone are $111,573.73. And one of those employees is an employee with 32 years of service and a former law enforcement from public safety with a large accrual balance. And he's 70% of that $111,000. So we are asking for.
You sure it's not Colonel Hitchens? Oh, no, go ahead.
No, his name is not tied to this amount. So we are short 101,005.73 on that particular line item.
Okay, we made note of it, and we'll probably double check it, just to,
Yes.
not that we don't trust you, it's just,
Well, I've got calculations, I've sent to Brian, and if
of course,
he's got
it's kind of
any
difficult to calculate when 23 or 25 are eligible for retirement, and you don't have any idea who's going.
Right,
That's,
exactly. We don't.
Yeah,
You don't know who's gonna take advantage of
No.
that.
no.
But that's all that I have.
What about the transferring the funds for the newly created Driver's Education Commission?
Josh, you want to speak to that?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had requested for several years to separate the driver's education funds just for these types of purposes, especially in the event of budget cuts, where the governor's office of highway safety was adversely affected because of the calculations.
Looks like you have more money than you really do.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Right.
So this just separates it out to a new line item. It's still the collections that's collected in the previous fiscal year that's allocated. For this fiscal year, year to date, we've only collected $1.73 million. So we again expect to come short of that $2.9 million as we have in the current fiscal year. But just want to put that on.
So you're just moving 39.10.5 down to 39.11.1.
That's
Right.
correct, sir.
Right, okay.
Right.
And I'm hoping to get you some more money
I appreciate it.
Yes.
with regard to a different bill.
I
That's in-
understand.
Right.
which is on tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
So-
I'll be there.
Okay. Any questions? Need I ask?
You know, we want to dig on down to where the clay is. Let me ask you, I'm just curious. You said 23 of your 25 people are eligible for retirement. Sounds like one of the hardest places in state government to get a job to me. Why is it y'all don't bring anybody in? And young man over there, even though he has a little deficit of hair, he looks rather young to be in that place.
Well, that's the 23 out of the 25 are eligible for the annual leave payout.
Oh, the annual leave fair.
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's not
Okay.
retirement.
Right.
Yeah, because that's what I thought it was retirement.
sorry
That's
if I
why we were
said
talking
that.
about how difficult it was to calculate the money. Okay. All right, now I understand. So y'all lack of hair is not really that bad, is it? All right.
Any other questions?
That'll do it.
We appreciate it. Judicial Council.
All right. Get the heavies now.
He can get your attention, though, I can tell you that. He can go on for a while. These Supreme Court justices, you know, it's
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking forward to the questions like you have no idea. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Charlie Bethel from our Supreme Court, and I'm here to present the budget request of the Judicial Council, Administrative Office of the Courts. I have with me Cynthia Clanton, our Executive Director, and Malia Wilson, who is our CFO. Here on behalf of the Council Accountability Court judges, I have Taylor Jones as their Executive Director, and then Chuck Boring, the Executive Director of the JQC, is with me, and joined to my immediate right is Andrew Zoll, who is our Chief Budgeting Officer. I know that the hour is late, Mr. Chairman, but nevertheless, with the indulgence of the committee, because I know that the nature of these hearings is that if all goes well, I will not be speaking to the full committee. I wanted to take a point of personal privilege just to simply say that the Chair of Appropriations is the sort of person who I believe our founders had in mind when they thought that we could govern ourselves. And we are lucky to have had his service, and we are lucky to have his friendship. And on behalf of myself, but also the judicial branch, who he has been attentive to in the budgeting process, I just simply want to say that we are grateful for Terry England's service. And so,
He announced his retirement the other day. There was a very obvious fall because not many people. And in fact, I had asked him 3 days prior that the rumor was going around. He said, "Well, I say that every year."
Yeah.
But he has done a great job, and he's been very nonpartisan, and I think he was well respected for that.
his service, we don't have a claim to keep him any longer than we already have, but we are grateful for his service.
And after Senator Hill leaving, that
Two oaks fall in the woods,
Oh,
it leaves
yeah,
a hole in
yeah.
the canopy.
and I have every faith in Chairman Tillery. I've known him for many years. But
Mr. Chairman, I will start, and I will, as others have done, omit the statewide impact numbers and just speak to the specific requests that we are making. And in your line 6.4.1, this is a position that's consistent with the position you took on the amended budget, and this is restoration of funds that were a part of the reductions in the previous budgeting cycle. Then on line 6.4.2, this is a research analyst position. This is a new request. The number with the accounted for raise would actually be 83,260. As you recognize, going across all of state government, the need for managing and evaluating data continues to go up. We have seen an uptick in particular in things like circuit boundary assessments, and when those requests come in, we have need to process that information. The last legislative cycle, that process was stressed to the point where we were razor thin coming back. And as we continue to do evaluations relative to federal dollars that are flowing now in parts of COVID relief, we need the ability to gather and assess data, and so that is that research analyst position. On your line 6.4.4, this is an IT help desk support position. I actually think that the numbers, the number there is actually 96,863 with the $5,000 increase. Similar to all the other issues we talk about, we have a growing demand, and this is not like database management. This is not the structure of the IT system. This is literally the help desk component where folks are having trouble inputting data, accessing data. Right now, that our existing IT team that is responsible for the maintenance of this system is stressed to be able to respond to our customers in different agencies, and then also internal to the Judicial Council. And that's the nature of
and
that
excuse
request.
me, but
Yes, sir.
that's primarily people in the judiciary, judges and DAs and attorneys that use the system. It's not many.
It's not, that would be right. It's not public facing.
Right. Okay.
It's serving other entities and agencies. So the councils of the various judicial, magistrate court council, superior court council, all those folks, and then the individual courts as well, are customers of our system. So yes, it's not the general public, it's folks within
I
the.
just had a sense of somebody sitting at a desk answering miscellaneous calls for people that didn't understand something that was going on.
No, I thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, this is to serve the folks who are actually using our system in their roles. The customer service specialist that you see on 6.4.3 with the $5,000 raise, 73,125. This is managing license renewals. For example, the Office of Dispute Resolution, you have to register and license. This is that has seen an increase in participation, but as have others. Right now, we have two full-time employees that are managing in excess of 5,000 registrants. There's been a 33% increase in the number of folks trying to register with the Office of Dispute Resolution. And so this is just, again, this is an operational need sort of position where we're asking for that position. Now, on 6.4.5, I want to address, this is a position that has existed in support of the Judicial Council's Access to Justice Committee. It has historically been funded by a grant from the State Bar. We have, State bars that are mandatory in nature are continually being educated by our Supreme Court of the United States about what they can and cannot do. And our court, as the agency that or entity that oversees our state bar in Georgia, has been placing pressure on our state bar about how they use funds. All that is to say, this is a position that we think is probably outside of the scope of the state bar to fund. It's a policy position, so it's going to be engaged sometimes in advocating for various issues. And so this is an attorney that staffs that committee and that committee's work. That committee ranges the gamut from helping folks access law libraries, the process that we're currently undergoing, re-envisioning what we do with law libraries, not really books on a shelf anymore, and how we allow more public access to those resources than just judges and lawyers, as has been the case in a lot of circuits in the past. Fulton County, if you hadn't visited their facility that they have as a public resource, is amazing. I'll just cite them out. But it also deals with ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act compliance, helping different circuits gain, for example, hearing support for jurors and witnesses alike. And so the work of the Access to Justice Committee has been dependent upon that role, and so we ask your consideration of funding that position. On your 6.4.6, that is just a reduction to eliminate what was a one-time expenditure, and I say one-time, non-recurring. This is the judicial workload assessment that we periodically update the data for, so that when we measure what judges are doing in Georgia and what their demand for example, doing a divorce or various, they calculate the time and motion study for that. And so this is just an update to that money you allocated, and so we don't need it to stay in the funds, in the budget.
That's typically how we decide whether or not we need new judges.
That's the data we point to, yes, sir. On lines 6.4.7 and 6.4.8 respectively, these are restorations that are consistent with the House position in the amended budget for the Magistrate Court Judges Council and the Probate Court Judges Council. And those are the same, essentially the same funds, just into the fiscal year, the big budget, as it were. On line 6.4.1, I want to, and for that matter, it ties to 6.4.9. These are our two sort of programmatic requests. These represent two grant programs that are administered at the Judicial Office of the Administrative Office of the Court's Judicial Council. Excuse me, easy for me to say. The Civil Legal Services Kinship Care Program is one that I suspect this subcommittee is familiar with. These are resources that we issue by grants. I will note that for both of these, I saw that Vicki Kimball from Georgia Legal Services is here, but we issue grants for them to provide civil legal representation. Kinship care is directed at finding permanent placement with relatives for folks who would otherwise enter into the system. And so we have recognized a significant savings for keeping the folks out of the system. The request here for $274,674 is consistent with the original scope of that request, which was $750,000. We have never hit that number fully. I personally have no doubt that we could go beyond that, but it is our desire to sort of get our arms around that level of funding and see where we are before we come back for more. So the request is that you would fully fund the original scope of the program.
It's been a positive program. I can't imagine that it wouldn't, but I mean, not only would it save money, but it also provides a better outcome for a lot of children.
Mr. Chairman, we can bring the anecdotal stories that support that all day long, and then I could just sort of point you to the average savings. If you approximate the amount that we spend, we project that it has saved in excess of $3.1 million in diversion from foster care, and folks going into a family member and having permanency. How you measure the value of that permanency is beyond me, but I think we all recognize that it's real, and so we've been very pleased with the success of that program. Similarly, the Civil Legal Services for Domestic Violence, which we're requesting $1.3 million, $1,322,828 in this cycle. This goes to support primarily victims of domestic violence and their dependents. So even if you're a child but you weren't a victim, you're functionally a victim. similar to the kinship care model, the savings by avoidance are dramatic. There are some studies out of Kentucky that validate some of the savings that we've recognized there in what they do in terms of avoidance of incarceration in many cases, because if you intervene and you get the protective order in place, which is the bulk, I don't know if I have a percentage, Vicki, but the bulk of the work is getting protective orders for folks against abusers to terminate the behavior.
But that's typically for attorney services, it's not.
It is the attorney service for, and so, but it goes all the way down the line of helping folks if they need to break a lease or if something else comes, down the process of as a result of a domestic violence encounter.
I've just been more familiar with domestic violence at CJCC and the funding that they do for people that are victims.
The service, the aftercare service to the victim. This is the court aspect of trying to address a domestic violence situation. Moving forward to section 6.1, the Council of Accountability Court Judges, as we talked about in the amended, and we're very appreciative that you put in the House position a restoration of funds that we had not officially requested. That number, $74,374. It was money that we believed would be available to us in the federal ARPA world. They are not. The White House and Office of Planning Budget have made clear that those are only for like case backlogs and things like that. And so for serious violent felonies, obviously accountability courts aren't generally built around serious violent felonies. And so this is a request for restoration of funding, and would appreciate that you look favorably on it as you did in the amended cycle.
I'm surprised you didn't ask for some more accountability judges. I think there are about 20, 21 requests out there, and
we will have an accountability court in every circuit, and I think several circuits are considering expansion. Obviously, our branch is very much in favor of that. I mean, we're very supportive of it, and the resources that go there, we believe in. We believe in the process of accountability courts.
Well, I just see it as, a continuing effort to rehabilitate people. It's in the past, they bring them into court, throw them in jail, fine them, turn them loose, and they're right back to where they are. At least this way, you are accounting for them, and you follow them down the path and make sure that positive things occur, or if that doesn't occur, then negative things occur.
At the risk of oversimplifying it, Mr. Chairman, I have several times described it as either the creation or recreation of a healthy family unit.
Yep.
For an individual. That's what an accountability court does. You have responsibilities, you have measurables that you're accounted for. You're accountable for your mistakes, but you're not thrown out for your mistakes.
Right.
It's a process.
Right.
So we've been very pleased with that program. So this is just their counsel that was looking for the restoration here. In 6.3.1, a training assistant is requested for the Institute of Continuing Judicial Education. The ICJE obviously delivers continuing education to the judges of Georgia and across Georgia. They have a staff of 7. This position would essentially be the person who would coordinate events, like, they would be the point on securing location, making sure that they had everybody registered, making sure everybody got their paperwork after the fact. As it stands, the group piecemeals that together, and they all cover it a little bit at a time out of their job, and having one to take the lead they think would be helpful. They have had a 34% increase in demand for hours of training from the judges, and so they're stretched in every direction, and trying to cover in this space has proven difficult. I will note, because they would certainly want me to, and I think it's fair too, that looking at states with comparable size judiciaries, so in number of judges that they serve, they are on the small side of a staff, and so they would like this position to be able to administratively deliver their services more efficiently. The last thing I will speak to, and certainly yield for questions, the Georgia Resource Center. This is making sure that everybody who's on Georgia's death row receives representation. This is a restoration, this is a reduction that was made in the last budgeting cycle, and request of restoration consistent with your position in the amended budget of $25,000. Mr. Chairman, obviously it falls under our our umbrella, but traditionally we have deferred to the Judicial Qualifications Commission to make their own presentation and answer questions. So I would defer to Chuck Boring. I know they do have a request with respect to that, and I'll certainly remain for questions.
And let me double check. 6.6.1 is for the people on death row.
Yes, sir. That's the Georgia Resource Center. That's correct. And this would be a restoration to their baseline funding that was prior to pandemic adjustments. We currently have 45 people under a sentence of death.
I've gone down there and talked to them a couple times. It's an interesting experience. You often wonder what kind of person ends up there, and I'm sure you've dealt with it in your judicial career, but it always amazed me. They look like a bunch of grandfathers that
they do
putting a kid on their knee, and but then you read some of the things they've done, and it's horrific. So, but that's neither here nor there. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just appreciate what you said. It does look, but you can't judge a book by looking at the cover, can you? I was misjudging you a long time, but anyhow, Mr. Justice, seems like so long ago you used to be Charlie, but it's Mr. Justice.
I still answer to it.
Still answer to it. Listen, I just wanted to say that after serving on this subcommittee for some time, it gives you a new appreciation for what the judiciary does, because usually, you just picture you passing down sentences, et cetera, and gone, but you ought to turn out an awful lot of work among the justices, and you do an awful lot. You do an awful lot, and you probably don't get as much thanks as you should, but that's kind of good, because y'all are kind of low-keyed. You don't make the paper a lot. Y'all just go ahead and keep churning out the work. Just want to thank you for what you do. Certainly appreciate it.
Thank you. That means
a lot.
It brings an even keel to our society. I mean, that's, usually the stopping point nowadays. Nobody's happy with anything until we get some kind of judicial ruling. And that seems to quell whatever issue there is. It's over.
We hope to maintain the credibility.
Yeah. Any further questions?
I'm outnumbered now, so I'm going to be excused. It's 2-1.
You ought to be accustomed to it. Okay, we thank you, Judge. Chuck Boyd.
Chairman, you think you can handle it all right without me? I know it's tough.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's what I was saying at the end. That although it falls under our category, we typically defer to the JQC, and I'll certainly sit with him because I don't want anybody to be left alone.
Not going to be lonely. Thank you.
I've talked to him on the phone before. I've never met him in person.
It's great to be in person finally. Good afternoon, everyone. Chuck Boring with the JQC as the director. I'm going to start with a positive tone that Justice Bethel has left it with you all. The judiciary does do a great job, and part of our job, really, one of the integral parts, is working with the judiciary, answering their questions from every level of court, giving them advice through ICJA, helping train judges, talk about the code of conduct and that type of thing. Unfortunately, sometimes part of our job is an adversarial process, and because of that, we do have to institute actions against judges that may run afoul of the code of judicial conduct. When we do that, as you all know, this agency was reconstituted about 5 years ago. When it was reconstituted, it was bifurcated. And so let me just start by saying I'm not asking for any money for the part of the JQC that I actually work with. We actually have a bifurcated process now for when there are formal charges brought of misconduct against a judge. It's not just that the JQC is judge, jury, executioner, and then it goes to the Supreme Court. We actually, the investigative panel, of which I'm the director of and work with, investigate and prosecute those cases. They also, it is adjudicated before a hearing panel. For the first 3 years of the JQC after reconstitution, I think they only had one case that was actually litigated in that entire 3-year process before the hearing panel. So needless to say, the hearing panel, which is made up of 3 commission members who are volunteers, who serve the state, and they have day jobs, judge, civilian member, and attorney member, they really did not have a lot of action before them. The past 2 years, I started in December of 2019. We have had luckily you all have been very generous in helping us increase our budget to come more in line with some of the other similar state agencies. We have instituted proceedings on several more cases that are actually being litigated as they should be, both because the judges do their due process and day in court, and then we also have to maintain the public's confidence in the judiciary. Because of that, now there are several other cases that are coming before the hearing panel. What we have found in kind of working the kinks out of this new system and working within our rules is that once that happens, the hearing panel is flooded with a great deal of work. In addition to their day jobs, they actually have to deal with some very serious matters and some very complicated legal issues. Within the past couple of years, we've had to fight legal issues involving the confirmation process of the JQC members. We have litigated before the hearing panel the jurisdiction of our very agency, and these matters, while complicated and serious, require a lot of effort on the hearing panel members. They do not have a set-aside group to rely on as far as a staff attorney, staff, legal counsel, anything like that. We can't be counsel to them because we're on one side and the judge and his counsel are on the other. So what this is, I've spoken with the hearing panel, and they had requested a pool of money for them to use when possible to retain counsel on specific cases that come before them. Not a full-time staff member or a full-time state employee that would be due benefits and that type of thing, because it would not be a position that they think would be a full-time position. But targeted funds for targeted counsel to help represent them and give them counsel during proceedings before them. Since we made this request to the governor's office months ago, we've actually worked with the hearing panel. The hearing panel has worked with some other large law firms in Atlanta to start a pro bono project. So we actually have some law firms that are having their associates assist the hearing panel as pro bono counsel on our matters before them. So we've been able to start moving the business forward. But whereas before, over the first 3 years, we had one case that was litigated, we have approximately 8 matters before the hearing panel right now where formal charges have been filed, and we are going through the process of the discovery process and going toward trial of the cases. So that's why we have that request, and that's what our request is for, just to give them a pot of money to independently request and retain funds to assist them during these proceedings.
And 100,000 doesn't seem like a whole lot. I've dealt with the Attorney General's office a lot when they hire outside attorneys to represent them, and that money goes pretty quick.
It absolutely does, and it's tough explaining to private attorneys the hourly rate for a government attorney. When I break it down, it's a whole lot different. I mean, you can ask Pete when he comes up. When you start retaining civil attorneys on the outside, the rate is a lot higher, and right. It runs pretty quickly.
Any questions?
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Last but not least,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
prosecuting attorneys.
Here's 2 copies of the transfer. That thing is just got the statewide spreads on the bottom. The blue are the updated.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. We will, I know the hour's late, and y'all are ready to get on.
You got a speaker over there?
No, sir, but I can. How about that?
Okay.
And then I'll move. I know the hour's late, and we'll get on with the process. I want to introduce to you Bert Poston. Bert is our budget sheriff for the Prosecuting Attorneys Council. He'll handle the DA program part of the budget. We also have Chris Jones here. Chris is our CFO, and will handle the PAC part of the budget. And also we have Mike Holman with the Council of Superior Court Clerks in case there's a question about that part of the budget. Mike's back here. There he is. And I also have Herb Cranford here. Herb is the DA for the Coweta Judicial Circuit, my former circuit. And he's kind of a chair in progress, so he can take over for Bert when Bert's tired of dealing with all this. I do want to thank the committee for the support y'all have given us in the past. I particularly want to thank your budget analyst, Brian Groom. Brian does a great job. He keeps us straight, tells us what we can and can't ask for, and he's polite in doing it. So we appreciate that very much.
And he's a great researcher. He runs down every little item that we can't find an answer for.
He is quite accurate and quite a detailed person.
And I'll forgive him for being married to an attorney, but
But just thank him. And now I'll turn it over to Mr. Poston, and we'll let him start. And then if you have any questions, we'll answer any questions.
sure.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. As Pete said, we'll try to go kind of quickly through this. The sheet that we provided to you has our original track sheet line items and plus the additional items, the governor's items and other things that have come up since the original budget was submitted to put numbers to those so we can talk about them or answer questions about those.
I see they're color coded. What's the blue and what's the brown?
The blue ones are a change from our original request.
Okay.
The brown ones are those that are added, like the
Supplemental.
statewide spreads,
Okay.
since the governor's
Okay.
report.
Correct. So, starting with 8.2.1, that amount, the 5.8 million, is related to placement of assistant district attorneys on the pay scale. As you know, this has been an ongoing issue for a number of years, where because of just the budget reality we've been in for the past several years, going back really to 2008, assistant DAs that have stayed with us have missed step increases and no longer where they should be on the pay scale. Turnover has alleviated some of that, but there's still a number of ADAs. In fact, there's ADAs in my office that are upside down. So the less experienced ADA is making more money than the more experienced ADA just because of how the budget process has worked. So that amount of money would do two things. One, it would, as of July 1st, it would take every single ADA and place them on the current pay scale where they should be. If we hired every ADA over again on July 1st and placed them correctly, it would put them at that.
That's with regard to longevity?
Correct. It's based on their
Okay.
primarily years of service and some other things. Basically we would look at them anew, probably go out and fill a new application out for every single one of them and verify their correct placement. Put them on the scale where they're supposed to be so you don't have those inequities that we've been living with for several years. And then the other part of that piece is to fund a step increase during the next fiscal year. So on their anniversary date, they would go, if they qualified for a step increase, they would go up a step increase and stay at correct placement. That's been our goal and our priority year over year, is to get everyone to placement and to continue to fund that pay progression and those promotional increases to cut down on our turnover and to help us not only recruit new attorneys and be able to advertise to them that, hey, you may start out at a lower salary than in the private sector, but at least you've got this pay scale and you got something to look forward to in the future. And we've not really been able to make that case to new hires for the last several years because we just don't know year to year whether we're going to get money for a step increase or not. So that's the big piece there, and again, that's our priority. 8.2.2 is an additional item related to the ADA pay scale, and it is to increment the pay scale up by 5%. And the thinking there, again, is to do with recruitment and retention.
Is that in addition to the $5,000?
Well, it was before the $5,000. So how the committee wants to address those in relation to each other, that's for y'all to decide. But in terms of where the request came from back in the fall, it was to adjust that pay scale up to increase. The last time we adjusted our pay scale, we adjusted primarily the bottom of the scale, and it compressed and left the top kind of where it was. And so we were looking to not only increase the bottom of the scale, but also to do something for those veterans, 20, 30-year people that haven't really gotten a lot in the last several years, to increase them. As it relates to the $5,000, for most ADAs, the $5,000 is going to be more than 5%. Our starting salary is $50,000, so that for that level, it's a 10% increase. But those, again, those veterans that have been up there close to 20 years or more, it would be a little bit less than 5%.
So a new ADA that just out of law school that you want to hire is $50,000?
Correct. That's where our pay scale starts. And that's obviously, it's a fraction of what a new attorney in a large law firm in Atlanta would make, but it's even significantly below what an attorney in a small firm would make.
And we had grant monies to hire assistant DAs for drug courts.
Mm-hmm.
And I was shocked. This was back in the late 90s, but $35,000 a year. I just couldn't imagine going to college and then law school and then having debt and trying to make it live and pay your debt with $35,000 a year. I mean,
Yeah.
you drive a garbage truck for better.
I started in 1992 at 30,000, so, and it's only 50,000 today. So a lot's changed in the last 30 years. So that's where that came from. And again, how the committee ultimately chooses to deal with the 5% versus the 5,000. We'll leave that for y'all to sort out. But that's where the request had come from, is to adjust the whole scale upward in a way that not only benefited the entry level, but benefited those people that have been with us for a long time. The next item is an adjustment. Chris, this may be one you could better explain, the
Sure, I'd be glad
minus
to.
$3,000.
Yeah, 8.2.3, the initial request back in the fall before we got our estimates was a 170,375. That's consistent with our amended request too, because the premiums were up. But in January, when we did get the estimates, we saw that the premiums are going down, and this is the net of that, is a reduction of 3,138.
It's a reduction of 3138 from the 170.
No, it's a reduction
That's the
to the
total.
budget. Yeah, the total reduction was 175,264, and then that spread went through the DA program and the PAC program.
Okay.
So then go into 8.2.4. That line item is an annualizer for assistant DAs that were created in relation to new judgeships during the current fiscal year, starting in January, I believe, to annualize those positions into the new full budget year. 8.2.5 is for new assistant district attorneys, for new judgeships in these judicial circuits that are named to be funded during this year. So, and that amount has changed, and the reason is related to the 5,000, since those are not existing positions. We had originally budgeted for them based on the current scale. The new number we've put in is what those positions would cost with the $5,000 increase to the scale. So that's, since they presumably by the time those positions would be hired, that adjustment would have been made. And the last item on our original request, 8.2.6, is $150,000 for legal fees for when prosecuting attorneys counsel and the district attorneys have to hire outside legal counsel, primarily to represent district attorneys that are being sued. We do sometimes also have to hire outside counsel to handle conflict cases that no other DA can handle, but the bulk of that money is for the legal fees to defend a DA when the Attorney General cannot, for some reason, provide representation to the DA. Then from there you go on to the new items. The first three, 8.2.7 through 8.2.9, are all part of the governor's request, the $5,000 and the other items there. I'll skip over those unless we need to talk about them. That $274 is an adjustment to the teacher's retirement system, or based on an adjustment to the teacher's retirement system. We have two assistant DAs who started their careers as teachers, stayed in that retirement system, and so anytime they adjust the percentages, it has an impact. Obviously, it's a pretty negligible impact, but that's where that comes from. And then the final four items are for assistant DAs for new judgeships that are being considered but have not been approved at this point. So there are bills pending to create new judgeships in these named circuits. If those go through and those judgeships are in fact created, then this is what the ADAs would cost to go with those. As I understand it, the one for the reason the number's different, if you'll notice, 8.2.12 is half the amount of the other three, is based on the start date in those different bills for different judges. So if those start dates change, it would impact those numbers as well. But that's just so that y'all will have those track if those judgeships end up being created.
You wanna touch on that? If they need to hear anything.
Yeah, we can, I skipped over the Council Superior Court Clerks program. There is a request there. That's a pass-through funding, so if there's any questions about that, again, that would, we have someone here from from the council that could answer that. Otherwise, I would turn it over to Chris and Pete to address the,
You know, and we had money in the budget for the Superior Court clerks through their office. I'm not sure what the difference in accounting is here. Because we had to look.
Did you, may I address?
Sure, sure.
The line item in this budget's the only state appropriation that we received.
But it's funded through the PAC or the district attorneys for the Superior Courts clerks?
It comes through the council, yeah, it comes through PAC.
Okay.
yeah, it just passes through our,
The only reason I remember is we had a discussion about clerks and, you know, how long we thought they ought to stay, because they were asking for some incremental raises, and, you know, I thought they kind of did 1, 2 years, maybe 3, and then moved on to their career. But okay.
so I would turn it over to Chris then to
Sure.
pick up at 8.3.1.
So for 8.3.1, this is similar to our amended for standard rent escalation. This is the 3%.
Contract.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. 8.3.2, similar request as the amended. This is $35,000 for IT help desk to support the tracker case management system. You know, this is the case management system that we talked about for the amended as well.
Right.
8.3.3, that's $40,000 to restore funds from the FY21 reductions for training of prosecutors as well as investigators. This is to support, you know, that statutory requirement for training so that they can earn their CLE as well as their post hours for those members. Just for note, looking at stats on the training funds in FY21, you know, PAC trained, they had 11,900 attendees for 179 trainings, and that covered from a CLE standpoint, 27,160 hours of CLEs. 8.3.4, this is $60,000 to restore training travel funds for the Solicitor General offices. This is for the full annual amount. As you recall, back in the amended, it was similar, but we reduced it down to that quarter. This is the full year.
Yeah, it was 60, and I think we reduced it to 20.
Correct. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 8.3.5. This one you'll see a change. The initial request was $109,580. The revised request is $121,758, and the change there is just including the $5,000 COLA as well as the adjusted benefits. This is a payroll specialist position, and really it's a new position, whereas PAC can bring in some payroll-specific expertise. We are participants in the payroll shared services through the state accounting office, but as they bring in efficiencies in their program, they're also shifting a lot of the expertise and the specific duties back to the agencies, and this is one of the roles that we need that in-house expertise. Some of those things that really are integral to what we're doing is payroll tax reporting and those payment processing to the Department of Labor, IRS, as well as the Department of Revenue. There are huge fines that we could realize if those reportings as well as those payments aren't done, as well as garnishment management and reporting to the courts about those garnishments. Moving on to 8.3.6, this is $186,970. This was again revised to include the COLA as well as updated benefits. This is a resource prosecutor to provide expertise in animal abuse prosecution.
And Mr. Chairman, you may recall last year.
I do.
Okay.
Came from agriculture.
Yes, sir. Yes, and Commissioner Black preferred that it would be in the Prosecuting Attorney's Council.
I remember the conversation.
Yes,
so.
sir. Okay. You're like a judge. I know when to shut up.
I don't know about that. I mean, not you shutting up, me being like a judge. I don't.
It's always a good time to shut up, I've found.
I shouldn't have said that to you.
No. We've been friends a long time.
Yeah.
The remaining 5 items that are not on your track sheet, but on the sheet that I provided, those are the statewide spreads.
Right.
And just for note too, I know it was mentioned earlier, but these are certainly based on our calculations, which There's a little bit of savings from what OPB, but there's also for the 40-hour leave piece of it. Our calculations were a bit higher than what OPB had calculated.
Hey, well, I'm the only one
You're the
left.
only one.
Well, that's one of the benefits of going last.
That's right.
I don't have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry you went last. I
No,
don't
that's okay.
draw up the agenda. I don't know what methodology they use.
Somebody has to go last.
Yeah.
It's not a problem.
You're exactly right. Somebody's gonna be last, and no matter how you cut it, so.
Appreciate you, appreciate Brian. Thank y'all so much.
Well, Brian's the worker, so, yeah.
The man works.
He does, he
These
does.
budget guys, they work.
And I shouldn't say anything about his wife. His wife's a good friend of mine too, and she carried me through the worst bill I ever handled here, that, I had like 24, 25 lobbyists working against me, and we succeeded in getting it passed, but
What bill was that?
pipeline bill.
Oh, okay. Yeah. God bless you.
Well, I don't talk about it much, because there's still players on both sides.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Brian.
Thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
Sure.